Hello all, this is Zimnala coming at you with another adventure in Demise, the Rise of the Kutan. We're gonna be heading back out with our squad of intrepid adventurers. First we're gonna clear our inventory a bit though. I guess it's pretty safe to say we're probably not gonna need that stuff anymore. I guess I just never actually emptied it. Doesn't matter too much though. We've not really been filling our inventory, filling it up, so. That's good enough for now. I am gonna probably switch back to warrior on the giant, but I want to see if doing it as an explorer with the vorpal feels good. Since we've been waiting long enough to do it, might as well enjoy it.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
We are gonna head back to that general area. What's going on down here? Yeah, nothing. There was a weird caged area, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember how you get to there. I actually think I do remember. Wasn't that like under the city or something? What I do know is when we go under the Dragon Palace, we'll be able to see that. I can go look again. Unfortunately, this place is largely unfilled monsters, so we are still clear to explore. That's not the way I wanted to go. Oh, right. It was through that weird back area. Yeah. Was it the sewers that got us there, or was it something else?
Cool.
Ah, they took our gauntlets. That sucked. It's not the worst, but it wasn't good. Well, we're gonna go back and explore down here. We did not finish this. I was excited about it when we came through here originally. Fortunately, you cannot read the script, but it seems to be a list of 11 items. Huh. And we read all these. Explorer, Magi, Sorcerer, and Warlock. Bind spells. Also familiar, the description here is of the Restrain spell, a more powerful version of Control that will renew the bind on a companion when it begins to fade. Like the Control spell, it has no effect on monsters that have joined you of their own free will.
Cool.
Illustrating Control, a spell of the Bind class. This text is familiar. This spell may be used to reinforce the bind that is already imposed on a companion. Note, the spell will not function on companions that have joined you of their own free will. Magi bind spells. So that's how we went backwards. The Forgotten Spell of the Bind class is taught by the well-secured and well-preserved edition of the Grimoire of Domination. Domination is the most powerful of the binding spells and is in the hands of a master mage. Almost no creature can resist it. Chained here is the Grimoire of Imprisonment, in remarkable condition for its age. It teaches a powerful blend of domination, restraint, and control known as life domination. It permits the caster to take control of almost any creature, living or dead, and make them a very loyal companion. Well, they certainly do something like that. Charm spells. You recognize Charm Animal, an excellent spell in the Charm class, causing vicious animals to befriend the caster. A basic Charm class spell, Charm Insect is described here. The rune is known to you. The spell will bind one or more insects to the caster, causing them to join as companions. Of course. This text illustrates Charm Humanoid, one of the most useful in the Charm class. Depending on the power of the caster and the resistance of the target, one can befriend almost any humanoid with this magic. Much like the previous spell, Charm Elemental will persuade a group of elementals to join the caster. A more advanced spell, Charm Giant affects only the oversized and attempts to bind them to the caster. Most spells in the Charm class are specific to a species or group, and Charm Undead is no exception. This spell affects the undead and attempts to make them join the living. The spell Charm Monster attempts to affect creatures that are resistant to the more specific types of charm spells. The enhanced spell control animal depends on the power of the caster and the resistance of the target. It can calm and befriend more animals than the original charm animal spell. Well, it's taken a couple second hiatus to figure life out, but we'll be good again. I believe in it. There we go. Chain secured to the lectern rests a text labeled Codex of Dragonkind, yet another of the forgotten spells of old. It teaches Charm Dragon. Requiring strict concentration, the spell will attempt to bind one or more dragons to the caster. Be warned that if the spell fails, the targets tend to respond adversely. One of the more advanced spells from the Charm class is described in the volume resting here. Control Elemental binds the more powerful of these creatures to the caster's side. As secure and priceless as its companion volume, the Codex of Devils teaches Dominate Devil, a more advanced form of arcane control. It attempts to bind one or more devils and keep them with the caster by using powers from the dark elements. The diabolically intricate leather tooling of this unremovable Codex of Demons is exquisite. Ancient magic is imbued in the volume. Dominate Demon, derived from demonology, uses the power of the earth to bind a demon to the caster for an unknown period of time. Fastened securely with a silver chain, the Codex of the Dead teaches a spell which is much more powerful than the lesser Charm Undead. Dominate Undead permits the caster to force many of the most powerful undead to obey. Looking fairly mundane, the text in the Codex of Bioheads discusses the finer points of casting Dominate Humanoid. Clearly this will put humanoids well under the control of the caster, as well as with other Dominate spells, it is among the most difficult to break. Nope. Decided to take a second again. Doesn't want me to read anymore. I'm kidding. A gilded chain secures the Grimoire of Souls. The most advanced of all charm spells is described here. Soul domination can only be wrought by a master mage, but if successful, will charm any creature living or dead. Yet another of the forgotten incantations is described by the Codex of Kings. It teaches Dominate Giant, which affects the behemoths and golems with the same potency of advanced charm that constitute the Dominate class of spells. It was a little hard to read with the white background. Recognizable from its rune, this is the ubiquitous Charm of Concealment, a defensive spell the visual class when cast. The recipient becomes invisible to the naked eye. Only those with special abilities will be able to see the character. The text here is written in a language you do not recognize, but it looks like a list of 9 spells. Location of protection upstairs. Location in protection upstairs. This was that other room we couldn't get into. Oh no, for some reason it's not liking what I have going on, but that's okay. Another frequently used visual spell, See Invisible, enables the character to perceive those enemies who are normally invisible from the naked eye. Especially valuable to those with poor sight, the visual class spell Flash of Sight enables the caster to see, for an instant, through the eyes of infravision. The Sorcerer Guild members are not taught this spell. A familiar rune once again. The volume describes shining lights, the brightest of the visual spells, which creates 12 glowing orbs that constantly surround the caster, giving off extremely bright illumination. The most basic of visual spells, brightness causes a glowing aura to appear around the caster for the duration of the trip into the dungeon. For some reason, the Sorcerer Guild members do not learn this spell either. Unexpectedly, there is a chain text here. The brass label indicates the Codex of Illusion. It describes a variation of Charm of Concealment taught only to the Sorcerer Guild that affects an entire party. A chain text, the Codex of Protection, is illustrated with the rune depicting Mass Protection, another of the forgotten spells. As one might suspect from the name, the spell does exactly what Protection does, except that it covers an entire party. The rune illustrated here is immediately recognizable, and the footnote in the common tongue states, this spell will create a protective field around the receiving character, making it harder for attacking characters to do damage. Protection location. Okay. Okay, we got it mapped out at least. The common spell described here and illustrated with a well-known rune is Established Mystic Portal. Every guild teaches this basic spell, which sets the caster's sanctuary location. Whenever a character subsequently casts Open Mystic Portal, he or she will be safely returned to that point. That's a way out, not a way in. Okay. Well, I was suspecting, but unfortunately, we have to go back around. Okay, and we will head back to where we were. Another common spell, Detect Depth, is described here. It is clearly useful in helping lost explorers find themselves. A useful spell, Soul Search, may be cast. I'll let it finish. Otherwise it'll probably get distracted. The useful spell Soul Search may be cast to glean the whereabouts of another character. Provided they are on the same level, the caster will receive the offset coordinates relative to their position and orientation that represents the location of the search for soul. The levels are different, an up or down character will be received. This is Find Direction, also useful in helping lost explorers find themselves. Securely chained, the ancient text here is known as the Codex of Enemies. It describes Beast Search, which was created by the grandfather of the current oracle in the times before the destruction of the guilds. The spell will permit the caster to look for a particular creature, or at least the area it inhabits. Another forgotten spell, Item Search, is described in the Grimoire of Artifacts. It is used to find which creatures may be found with such an item and their whereabouts. It is no more accurate than Beast Search. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had stepped on all those squares. The rune is familiar to you. This book must describe Identify Trap, which ensures that a trap is correctly recognized. The class in this section must be magical. As expected, this is the rune associated with another of the magical chest class, magical entry. The spell serves to unlock many magically sealed chests in strong boxes. Here is the rune and accompanying instructions for Dispel Magical Lock, required for those chests protected by very strong enchantments that foil the spell magical entry. This spell is capable of dealing with such enchantments. A spell taught only to explorers and clerics. According to its description, amphibious breathing enables the skin of the recipient to absorb oxygen directly from water, thus allowing an extended breathing period while submerged. Taught only to members of the Guild of Thieves, according to the description. This is Destroy a Container, used when a thief encounters a chest that is considered too dangerous to risk opening normally. The spell will destroy the chest without harming the contents, thereby removing the trap from the container. It is ineffective against magically locked chests. The spell Fate is rarely seen or used, except when set as a trap. Its effects are highly unpredictable. It is sometimes beneficial, often harmful, and never quite what is expected. Identify is described here, a magical class spell which is not so much cast as attached to artifacts. It will provide information about an item of interest. The rune is not familiar. The text describes Uncurse, a spell which permits an adventurer to unequip a cursed item without visiting the store first. Chained very securely, this is apparently a rare copy of the Grimoire of Telekinesis. It teaches Spell Strike, which imbues any melee weapon with unlimited range, allowing the furthest of enemies to be smitten, even if out of range and out of sight. Oh, so it lets you hit enemies you can't even see. Not just enemies out of range. Interesting. That's even better than spells, then. Technically. Those require line of sight. The spell Leprosy, when invoked, causes the target to be infected with such an advanced case of the disease that quite often they fall apart and die horribly. Another unlikely spell taught also by the Cleric Guild, according to the footprints. This spell is also familiar, Banish Demon. a dark spell of old, much like its partner. The spell calls on Hades to take back those who have escaped. Judging by the chain, this must be one of the Forgotten Element spells. This writing describes acidic spray, and the brass plate on the lectern notes that this is the librum of acid. When cast, an acidic sheet of vile liquid will fly towards one attacker, corroding them upon contact. Thankfully, clerics are not taught any of the higher level element spells, so thankfully. Familiar with this rune, you recognize Dispel Undead, a useful spell when one is attacked by these creatures. As any affected by the spell will instantly break down and become dust. Secured and somewhat dusty, the Codex of Stoning describes Flesh to Stone, a chilling, deadly spell derived from creatures capable of turning flesh to stone. The caster simply needs to touch his target to turn them into a bird perch for eternity. The spell elemental is described here, another word familiar to you, even though the true nature of most elemental creatures is unknown. The spell is said to act much like the Dispel Undead as it breaks apart the elemental targets and turns them back into the raw elements from which they were formed. Yet again secured fast, the most powerful element spell is taught by the Grimoire of Asphyxiation. Paralyzing Death gives the ability to the caster to nullify the target's nerve impulses, stopping them in their tracks, and halting all life functions. Unexpectedly, there's a chained volume here, labeled as a Codex of Abolishment. It illustrates Abolish Undead and is described as the most advanced spell ever devised. Its induced magic is so great, it usually annihilates its targets. The only drawback is it's so focused it cannot affect a large number of foes. You know the rune for heal, a more advanced heal spell that is used to repair both small and large wounds. As with minor heal, other elements are not affected. One of the 5 basic heal spells, Cure Paralysis, will remove any type of paralysis that has been inflicted upon the receiving character. The last of the 5 basic heal spells, Cure Disease, will remove most of the diseases that a receiving character may suffer from. From this point on, the more powerful and specialized heal spells are the sole purview of the Cleric's Guild. This chained volume is apparently the Codex of Life. It illustrates the rune for Raise Dead, a spell which recalls the spirit of the receiving character's body and attempts to reunite the two. Be aware that this spell will only bring the recipient to life, not heal them. Another chain text. The Codex of Restoration describes the spell Restoration, which is the most advanced of the heal spells. It usually renews a character to full health after only one casting. The Codex of Curing lies here, but not for the taking. It references Cure, which will both heal the character and remove most ailments that the character may be suffering from, such as poison or disease. Chained Well. This book is the Codex of Healing, discussing Mass Heal, an advanced spell that affects the whole party. Adorned with artistic lithography, the Codex of Revival teaches the spell Restone to Flesh, which is specifically used to return a stoned character to life. The spell is the only one of this resurrection class which will restore petrified characters. Sporting a brand new adamantite chain, you suspect that the Grimoire of Light may have been the recent target of an attempted robbery. Little wonder, as the spell teaches is Resurrect, which combines Raise, Dead, and Cure, bringing a corpse back to full health. And here, Blinding Darkness, we read this one. It was up here we didn't do. Now, these are gonna probably be all the elemental and attack spells, if I was to guess. The ghastly spell Summon Shade is described in this text. The spell creates a mental demon so terrifying it scares most creatures to death. The most powerful of the 4 mind spells is Impending Doom. This spell, dark form of magic, convinces the targets that they have died, causing their bodily functions to stop, effectively killing them from within. Cleric and Warlock damage spells. The rune for damage spells is familiar territory for you. This text describes cause wounds. When cast, the spell attempts to rupture the internal and external tissues of the target and kill them. Here is described cause heavy wounds, a more advanced form of the first of the 6 common damage spells. The spell not only attempts to rupture the tissues of the designated target with more force, it also attempts to implode the victim as well by crushing the organs. These spells sound great. Killing power is not fully understood here either. It causes the life force of the target to be yanked out from their bodies. Accompanying the description of deadly harm is a lurid depiction of the spell in action, a more devastating form of killing power that functions slightly differently. The spell drains the life force of its victim and feeds it to the earth. Draining Touch, described here, is a deadly spell. When invoked and the caster touches a designated target, their life force is usually drained into the ground, leaving a lifeless shell. The book known as the Codex of Fatality is chained to the lectern. The rune displayed is familiar enough that you realize it describes a high-level damage spell not commonly known. The footnote states, cause fatal wounds will force the bones of the designated target to explode, resulting in instant death. Doesn't that sound lovely? Who needs bones? Sounds like something for babies. Okay. Another chained valuable relic, the Grimoire of Death, is here. The text describes one of the most feared magic spells in the world, since there are few known resistances to it, Word of Death, which is known by only the most advanced spellcasters, calls upon the wrath of Nardun, the god of pain. This ancient text is bound in dragon hide with gilded clasps. A note from the head librarian is attached. Shatal is believed to have created this most unusual damage spell, capable of great deal of injury, even to those normally protected from magic. The means of conjuring the spell have been lost, but there are a few dangerous demons and devils able to utilize this to great effect. Oh, they sure do. Unfortunately, they seem to have taught literally every spellcaster, but the players how to cast it too, so. Never really safe with those spellcasters around. Okay. You recognize the rune for magical flight and little else in this volume. The rune for the shock spell catches your eye. The basic spell creates an electric arc from the caster's hands to the designated targets, attempting to instantly electrify and kill them. Chained securely, in excellent condition, is probably the original edition of the Codex of Levitation. You had almost forgotten this rune, representing the mass levitation spell, essentially the same as levitation, except it affects the whole party. The first of the basic kill spells is described here. Paralysis causes all nerves in the designated target to stop functioning, causing death. It is similar to Life Shatter, but requires less ability to master. Another recognizable rune is illustrated here. The footnote refers to Lightning Bolt, summoning the power of the storm. This spell pulls electricity from the ground and blasts it into the midst of one's targets. The rune for the kill spell in this volume is exquisitely drawn, and the text references Life Shatter as a more advanced form of paralysis, also affecting the spirit and attempting to extinguish it. Unmistakably, another electric rune is shown here for the spell Thunderbolt, which is more advanced than its predecessor. It doubles the damage and affects more targets. Shimmering Death is discussed here. When invoked, the spell paralyzes the victims with blinding light, then sucks the life force from their helpless bodies. This tome is securely chained. The rune is clearly indicating the spell described is of the electrical class. The description reads, "Very little is understood about electrical discharge. The spell creates an electrical mesh in the middle of one's target and explodes into an electrocuting fury. Securely chained to the pupitre, the original Codex of Dissertation displays the rune for a kill spell, and its target simply states, a simple spell which drives the spirit from the flesh. It attempts to shut down both mind and body." Well, we'll be done with these spell readings soon. I wanted to read the text regardless. For myself, even if it isn't as exciting as some of the content. I like lore just about as much as exploring. The chained or possibly grounded volume shows the rune for electric field, the most devastating of broad-ranging electrical spells. Few creatures can withstand the shock delivered from this white-hot field of electricity. Another priceless original text, the Codex of Darkness, is secured here. It describes the spell Piercing Darkness. It is said this spell invokes a dark form from the spirit world, which penetrates its victim and consumes their life force. Singularly impressive, the spell described in this securely fashioned tome is striking. Directed at a single creature, this spell releases a monstrous bolt of lightning that will crisp most victims instantly. The Grimoire of Mortality is here, describing Field of Death. A more powerful and flexible form of cause death. This spell attacks the spirit with such power that the body is enveloped in flames and turned to ash. Such angry little dragons. Actually doing a good job at beating up one of our members. They might actually... They got him. Another first edition, the Grimoire Portals. It too is chained securely. You recognize the rune for the most basic of the resistance spells, Resist Fire. This incantation will increase the caster's defense against fire attacks. The lectern shows off the Grimoire of Transportation, chained as are all the Lost Tomes. The illustration here is the rune for Resist Draining. The footnote is straightforward. The spell will increase the caster's resistance against life-draining attacks. These are some pretty strong dragons. These are all the warriors are some of the toughest. Just gotta remember we lost our gloves when we get back to town. The rune is unmistakably Resist Cold, a spell which increases the cast's ability to resist the effects of cold attacks. Of course, this must be Resist Poison, according to the rune. It is a word which increases the cast's ability to withstand venomous attacks. Here is a description of Resist Disease, as straightforward as most resistance spells. A caster's ability to fight off most infections is significantly improved. The rune here is easily recognized. It is Resist Paralysis. There is nothing worse in death than succumbing to a paralysis attack, which renders a victim unable to attack or defend himself for many rounds of combat. A simple incantation in preparation can avoid this. The Medusa head inscribed with the rune indicates the description is of the spell Resist Stoning. The word will increase the caster's ability to fend off petrifying attacks. A chained volume of the Librum of Magic is here. From the rune shown, it is associated with the spell Resist Magic, which increases the caster's resistance to magic spells. Clearly an original, the Codex of the Mind is in excellent condition, and of course chained. The rune indicates the spell described as Mental Resistance, which is a ward against mind attacks. The Codex of Electricity here. According to the label on the lectern, this chain text must refer to the spell Electrical Resistance, providing enhanced defense against electrical attacks. As if to reflect the importance of this ancient tome, the Codex of the Elements has a gilded chain securing it in place. The book is open to add an illustration of the rune for Resist Acidity, clearly providing the caster with protection against acid attacks. Something here is not right. Looking closely, you see that part of a chain hinges down from the lectern. It has been sawn through. The original book is missing. Some other volume has been placed here so that theft is not obvious. What? Well, I didn't mean to attack you guys. Well, we did win. I was trying to see if there was a hidden item. The description made me suspicious. The open page shows 6 runes, only 2 are recognizable to you: Cold Blast and Ice Spray. Sorcerers. The book shows spell runes you recognize: Firebolt, Blue Frames, and Flame Sheet, followed by 3 that are unfamiliar. For once, below the ancient writing and the rune. For Firebolt, there's a footnote in the common tongue. This simplest of fire spells creates a small fireball and hurls it into a group of monsters, burning anything that gets in its way. Here, the easily recognizable runes for Cold Blast are described in the same way as the guild libraries. This spell creates a blast of air that is cold enough to kill most small creatures. However, someone also added, used carefully, can also remove wards. Good. Under the strange writing in the blue flame rune, the footnote reads, a more advanced spell of fire. When this spell is invoked, the caster is able to hurl a blue-colored flame at a group of monsters, inflicting extensive damage. The rune for ice spray are recognizable, and the description is also familiar. This spell creates a wall of ice and blasts it towards the opponents. The wave of liquid ice will almost certainly freeze the victims instantly. Beneath the rune for Flame Sheet, there is the following note, derived from the Firebolt spell. Flame Sheet will summon a wall of fire and hurl it towards one's opponents, usually causing the targets to be burnt to cinders. An unfamiliar rune and a clearly more powerful cold spell is described. Hailstorm is a more advanced cold spell. Casting this will create a storm of magical hail that crushes and smothers its victims, attempting to freeze and shatter them. You recognize the rune for Striking Flame, but the ancient description here states, when invoked, the spell creates a devastating pillar of fire that forms directly in the middle of one's opponents and arcs outward, enveloping all who are caught in the flames. The runes are getting harder to decipher. The spell detailed here as Arctic Storm is a spell feared by most fire creatures. The storm that is invoked is a collection of all the lower level cold spells and is so intense that very few can survive. The description here is a more powerful fire spell. This spell creates a gigantic sphere of fire and hurls it into the midst of one's opponents. Once the sphere contacts living matter, it explodes in an emulating blast of fury. You realize that most don't know there is ever more dangerous cold spells. Here the description simply notes, worse than the Arctic Storm, the blizzard has an extended range and duration. The last entry on this side is, Burning Air is the deadliest fire spell of all. This hideous magic will cause the air to instantly turn white hot around one's opponents, killing almost anything that moves. This is obviously the most potent cold spell known to the Draconians. The description notes, only the most practiced sorcerer can invoke Frigid Wasteland, the worst of the cold spells, instantly plunging a region into the depths of an ice age. We've never learned that. Also, we found a thing. This is a place we've never been. Well, we're on our way to something. Or nothing. That's at least a place we haven't seen.
Cool.
Another grimoire of telekinesis. A north square. Well, we got past it. Forbidden spells, cleric, magi, and sorcerer. A much more powerful form of Morkel heal is described in the Treatise of Restoration. Outlawed by many places, the spell will often drain life entirely from the subject. Abusers of this spell are rightly called vampires. Of course. What may be the original Treatise of Withering is chained to this lectern. It describes Withering Force, which does little damage, though by striking up to 16 opponents may draw a larger cumulative amount of health into the caster than the more focused Morkel spells. As with most Morkel spells, it should only be used in the gravest of emergencies. The Treatise of Neurosis, describing the spell the same name, is fastened securely to the pedestal. Neurosis does slightly more damage than Withering Force, striking up to 32 opponents, and can draw a larger cumulative amount of health into the caster than the Morkel damage spells. A teleportation spell, Morkel Teleport, is described in the Treatise of Teleportation. It is a more powerful form of teleport, but of course has a cost. The caster's life force powers its ability to break the limitations that normally restrict teleportation. Fastened securely, this pristine copy of the Treatise of Souls describes Portal of Souls. Its description isn't quite what you expected, as it seems to be able to return you and your party to a sanctuary, but at a considerable cost to health of all. The Treatise of Teleportation, exhibited here, teaches Tark Displacement, a more powerful form of the common displacement spell. Its drawback is that it is powered by the caster's life force and must be used with great care. I was hoping there was like a secret back here, but it's just the forbidden spells. The Treatise of Mucus teaches Morkel Mucus, an aptly named conjuration covering its victims in an acidic secretion that swiftly evaporates, drawing away life force from up to 48 opponents. Described as the Treatise of Soul Withering, the spell Wither Soul can do much damage, striking nearly 100 opponents. It is capable of drawing massive amounts of health into the caster. It is perhaps the most deadly spell that the guilds have ever encountered. This dangerous spell, Hellspray, capable of striking up to 64 foes, should only be used against the most evil of enemies. It is taught by the Treatise of Hell. Morkel damage, Morkel death, yep. Okay, we'll start at the bottom. The Treatise of Ripping Death, as its name suggests, teaches Ripping Death, which is an even stronger version of Life Drain. Top of the line in the Death class, Terminate Existence is taught using the Treatise of Annihilation. Clearly all spells of the Morkel type take their power from the life force of unfortunate victims, and Silent Soul, taught by the Treatise of Silence fastened here, is no exception. It is targeted at a single creature. Indiscriminate use of any of this class of spells is considered very evil. The Treatise of Spiritedness teaches Destroy Spirit, which is a little bit more powerful than its predecessor. Treatise of Shattering Spirits rests here. As one might expect, it teaches Shatter Spirit, a slightly stronger version of Life Drain, sucking the life force from its victims and adding some of it to the caster's health. All these ancient texts make you uneasy. The Treatise of Draining is no exception. It teaches Life Drain, which is, however, only capable of affecting a bare handful of creatures for a fairly minor effect. The spell sucks the life force from its victims, adding some of the illicit power to the caster in the form of additional health. The chain securing the Treatise of Dark Power is rusted a little, but you have no inclination to try to remove the book. The spell it teaches Dark Power, as with most of these evil damage spells, transfer the forces from the victim to the caster. Here lies the tree ties of displacement, explaining the principles of casting displaced life. Building on the strength of life drain, this spell sucks more life force from the victims, adding some of the caster in the form of additional health. Can they get much worse? The heavily secured tome here, the Tree Ties of Domination, provides the instructions necessary to conjure the ultimate mortal damage spell. Spiritual Domination instantly sucks the life force from many victims, adding some of it to the caster. This is a very dangerous spell. The Tree Ties of Death Drain leeches the spirit of its title. Yet another progressively worse spell. This one can and does suck the life force out of creatures. When did we get hurt by something? Oh, does this place just lower your health? Standing here actually causes you to get drained. Am I correct? Let's see. I didn't even realize for a second. I mean, it's pretty funny. Now, either way, we have completed our reading of the library books. That did take a little bit longer than I had anticipated. But I enjoyed it. So we'll try to pin and then head back. Fortunately, that shouldn't be a problem. There's plenty of dragons. I was hoping if we left that it might be more peaceful when we return into the room. That isn't what happened, though.
Cool.
Well, we are gonna be pinned soon with at least someone. I don't know how close everyone is. Actually, 3 of our characters are actually pretty close to each other. Hmm.
Cool.
Hmm. No, wrong character. Doesn't matter too much though. Slowly we are making our way through. Still plenty of dragons to fight. Okay, so Billy's saying, we cannot leave. We believe there is an infernal machine that generates a binding force we cannot break. It is undoubtedly an underwelton contrivance and is below this level. Perhaps you can destroy it. So Pilly did give us a hint, I think. There's a device that we can destroy. That was new dialogue. The thing I thought to ask. We never fought the princess. We always let her run. Oh well. Poor princess. This will have another character pinned. And now we are finally actually pinned with 3 characters. Just have to fight a few things, but not everything. Alright, and that brings us back to town. Bam. Alright, you can't resurrect yours the same way. Okay. Now we'll clear out the bounty board. Cool. Go, we got the sword of battle in our hearts. We will fight to the end. What level was our upgrades? Let's take a peek. That's right, we did lose our gloves. Good thing I remembered. $278. Yep, we're getting there, but we're not quite there. Cool. Well, I am going to take a couple moment break, and then we'll give another jump on in. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in a moment. Bye-bye, all.